Let's just be honest, Baki Hanma has one of the best physiques in anime history, and a lot of guys would love to look like this. In particular, he has amazing arms, shoulders, and a great chest. Well, in this video, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know to have a chest just like Baki. We're going to go through everything from frequency to intensity to the actual exercises that you'll be using. So if that sounds interesting to you, then you're in for a treat. So let's go ahead and get started right here. And by the way, this chest program would work for any anime character, not just Baki. He's just the one that I think has an amazing chest. It could work for someone like Goku or his father Yujiro. Basically, if you want to grow your chest, this is the best way to do it. So first of all, we need to define what is a mesocycle. What is that in terms of training? A mesocycle is about 4 to 6 weeks of focused training. Now, when you're focusing on something, in particular with this program, we're going to be focusing on the chest. So a mesocycle for us in this instance would be like, let's focus on the chest for 4 to 6 weeks and just really hit it hard. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to be neglecting the arms or the shoulders or the back or the legs, especially. Don't skip leg day. But it does mean that maybe they're going to be on the back burner for now while we're going to be really boosting up the chest work. Because if you try to boost everything all up at once, then you're going to really fatigue really quick and it's just not going to work out for you. So that's what a mesocycle is. But what we need to do is, it's not just going to take 4 to 6 weeks to grow your chest to look like Baki's. It's going to take a little bit longer than that for sure. But you can start to see some minor improvements in that amount of time. Usually it takes about 3 focused mesocycles in a row before you really start seeing those gains. And it doesn't mean that by the end of those 3 mesocycles that you're going to have that Baki chest, but it does mean that you're going to be well on your way and you're going to have a much bigger chest than you did when you started. Now, after that, what you're going to want to do is kind of go back down to a more generalized routine for a couple of mesocycles, and then you can go back into focusing on those mesocycles that really focus on the chest for a while. Make sure you're working out any imbalances, like if you've been hitting your chest really hard sometimes your back is neglected, and then maybe sometimes that rounds over your shoulders like that. That's an issue that I had when I first started working out. I almost always neglected my back and always worked my chest, and so that would round my shoulders forward, causing me to have bad posture. So you need to make sure you're also working your back out quite a bit, just for things like that, just for muscular imbalances. Make sure you have good posture, and just because everyone likes to have good back muscles too. So that's how you're going to do this. You're going to have 3 focused mesocycles. Everything else is going to be somewhat on the back burner in that amount of time. And keep in mind, you may not need that. Maybe you're already well on your way to having a Baki-like chest right here. And it'll only take 1 or 2 really focused mesocycles for you. So that means you're probably already advanced in your training, or at least intermediate. But whichever level of training you are, make sure to implement these techniques that I'm about to show you. So first of all, frequency. How often do we actually want to train our chest per week? Well, most studies will show us about 2 to 3 times. Any more than that, and maybe you're training just a bit too much, you're going to fatigue that chest just a bit too much and you won't be able to recover for your next session. And then any less than that, and maybe you're not getting the gains that you could be getting otherwise. This also depends on how well trained you are. So if you're just starting, you might want to go more frequent throughout the week. And then if you've already been training for a while, you have a really nice chest, then 1 or 2 could work really well for you. Now this takes us into how many sets per week should you be doing? Well, on average for growth for a particular muscle group, we're looking at about 10 sets minimum, up to 20 sets maximum. Somewhere around that range. It could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. Now, and this also depends on how well trained you are too. So if you're newer to training, even though you may want more frequency throughout the week, you might actually want a little bit less on the sets. And if you're more advanced, you might want more sets per session, but you might want to train less frequently throughout the week. And then over the course of the mesocycle, you actually may want to add sets in each week. So that first week, you might start with 3 sets on everything, then you might go to 4 sets, then 5 sets, and then maybe you want to plateau around 5 or 6 sets right there towards the end of that mesocycle. Rep ranges can really vary. Typically we say between 5 to 30 reps will really hit a muscle and really make it grow. But for chest, because it's such a big muscle group, kind of like the quads, the glutes, it actually typically we see that down towards the bottom end of that range is going to work a little bit better. Now, if we're talking biceps, triceps, something like that, or shoulders, usually they respond better to higher rep ranges. So you might start at like 10 reps, 15 reps, 20, maybe even go all the way up to 30 on certain lifts. And of course, these reps don't just depend on the muscle group, but they depend on the actual lift as well. So for bench press, if you're doing 12 reps, that's a lot of reps, but 5 to 8, somewhere in that range is really good, and you could still see really good growth. But you can also press a lot of weight and produce a lot of force with that chest. Now, as you go into something like maybe a fly, something that's really isolated in the chest, 5 reps usually doesn't work as well as going up to like 10, 11, or 12 reps, something like that. And of course, these are general numbers. You could go a little bit more than that. If you want to go 15 reps, that's totally fine too. And by the way, if you're enjoying this content, make sure to like and subscribe as it really helps out the channel. And who knows, maybe it'll reach more nerdy bros and help them to get ripped as well. And also, if you're interested in an actual training program on growing your chest like this, like you don't want the information, you're just like, tell me what to do. I actually have the training program and I've linked it in the description down below. That's at my website, rickerfit.com. And you can feel free to purchase it there, which also supports the content as well. All right, so next up, we have to talk about the actual types of exercises that you're gonna be utilizing during this program. There's 3 specific ones. We have horizontal presses, incline movements, and isolation movements. Now, with the horizontal presses, that's the one you typically think of when you think about working the chest. And this is gonna hit the bulk of the chest. It's gonna hit the upper pecs, the mid pecs, and the lower pecs. That's something like your bench press, your push-ups, your dumbbell benches. Now, the second movement is gonna be your incline movements. Here, you're gonna hit more of the clavicular head, which is the upper chest up here. So if you want that massive shelf up there on top, then you're gonna wanna do incline movements like an incline bench press, incline flies, or dumbbell incline bench. And then lastly, you'll want to implement isolation movements. So this really helps with the stretch right there, as we know is one of the most important parts of the movement. And then you can get a hyper contraction, especially on something like cable flies, as you can cross over like that and really hit that inner part of the pec. Now, these movements include, but are not limited to, dumbbell flies, incline flies, and cable crossovers. And with those cables, we can go high, medium, low, anywhere in between. So typically we say you want to start your workouts with compound movements like the bench press because you're fresh and you can produce more force and you can push more weight. But if isolation movements really help the chest grow, you don't want those to suffer either. So here's a technique that you can do to really build up those metabolites, and it's called the isolation sandwich. And I learned that from Renaissance Periodization. They've got some great content over there. Make sure to check them out as well. So the isolation sandwich is basically you're taking your big lift, your compound lift, and you're starting with that. That's like the bread that you start with. And then in the middle is the meat, the isolation, that's like maybe your flies. And then you would finish with a compound lift for the other part of the bread, making the sandwich. You kind of get that visualization there. And so that's what this is. So for example, this might be like starting a routine with a bench press and then going into a cable fly, and then right after going back into it like an incline dumbbell press. That would actually be a really good routine for you. Now, speaking of routines, we're gonna go into an example training program right here. So basically, this is how you're gonna implement everything that I just said. So you're gonna pick your 3 favorite exercises, one from each of these movements. So you're gonna wanna pick 1 horizontal press, 1 incline movement, 1 isolation movement. That's your first thing. And then you're gonna perform them over the course of 2 to 3 sessions each week for about 5 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks is a mesocycle, so about 5 weeks. And each week you're gonna wanna increase that intensity. So let's say you start with a bench press and you do 100 pounds. The next week you can either increase the intensity by increasing the load, increasing the sets, or increasing the reps. Typically, we'll say to increase the load or sets is typically just a little bit better. But in this case, let's say you start with 100 pounds the first week. Then the next week, you could increase the load to 105 or 110 pounds. Then the next week, 110, 115 pounds, something like that. Or you could start with 3 sets of 10 with that bench press at 100 pounds. Then the next week, you could go 4 sets of 10 at 100 pounds, then 5 sets of 10 at 100 pounds. So either way you do it, you want to increase that intensity over the course of those 5 weeks. And then on that 6th week or the last week in your mesocycle, you're going to deload, which means the intensity is really high, the volume's really high, and then you're going to drop it down by about half the intensity, half the volume. So if you're up to doing like 5 sets or 6 sets, or you're up to like 200 pounds, you would want to take it down to like 2, 3 sets, take it down to like 100 pounds. Everything, just kind of cut it in half. That's a really easy way to do it. There's probably better, more efficient ways to do it, but cutting it in half is really good. Basically, you're not making any gains this week. This week is all about recovery. And people either love or hate deload weeks. It's just a mixed bag either way. It's all about recovery though. And it's absolutely necessary. You have to do it to recover so that you can make more gains in the next cycle. And speaking of that, you'll repeat this type of training for 2 more cycles. Of course, you're gonna wanna implement variation into your routine. So if you do bench press 1 mesocycle, the next mesocycle, your horizontal press could be like a dumbbell bench instead of a barbell bench. Or it could be a chest press machine, something like that. So you just want to make sure that you're changing it out every single time. And that's exactly it. That's exactly how you're going to get a chest like Baki or any other anime character, or just to grow your chest significantly. If you perform this over the course of 3 mesocycles, I guarantee you're going to see significant gains. And then of course, as you repeat it over and over and over, like let's say you do 3 mesocycles, a couple of mesocycles off, 3 mesocycles, a couple off, the more and more you do that, the more it's going to grow until you get major gains and an incredible chest. And just a reminder, I have a full training plan with all of this implemented into it already created for you. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the bio, or you can get it at rickerfit.com. What's a part of another character's physique that you would like to have? Let me know in the comments down below. And if it gets enough likes, who knows, I might even make it into my next training plan to help you guys reach those goals. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, make sure to put a bicep emoji in the comments down below, and like and subscribe, of course, and I will catch you in the next video.